"Just make it fast," she whispered, her voice trembling so quietly that it barely rose above the hum of the machines in the room, and in that moment every breath felt borrowed, every second heavier than the last. The single dad standing in front of her felt his chest tighten as if the words had reached inside him and wrapped around his heart, because he knew this wasn't just about her pain, it was about a choice that would echo far beyond this room. What he did next would shock a powerful CEO watching from behind the glass, but more importantly, it would change lives in ways no one could have predicted. He had never imagined his life would lead him here. Once, he had been an ordinary man with an ordinary routine, waking up early to pack lunches, tying his daughter's shoelaces, and rushing to a job that barely paid enough but gave him dignity. His wife had passed away years ago after a sudden illness, leaving him with a small child and a grief that never fully faded. He learned to survive on strength he didn't know he had, pushing through exhaustion because someone depended on him. That resilience was tested the day he lost his job due to company downsizing, a decision made in a boardroom by people who would never know his name. Desperate to keep his daughter safe and fed, he took a temporary position at a private medical facility owned by a wealthy CEO known for efficiency, profit, and emotional distance. The woman lying in the bed was not just another patient. She was the CEO's younger sister, a fact he discovered only after being assigned to assist in her care. She had been battling a rare, aggressive illness that drained her strength and hope, and the treatments had failed one by one. The doctors spoke in careful tones, offering statistics instead of comfort. She was tired, not just physically, but spiritually, worn down by months of pain and the feeling that her life had become a burden to everyone around her. When she looked at him, she didn't see an employee or a stranger, she saw a fellow survivor, someone whose eyes carried loss. That was why she trusted him with her words. "Just make it fast," she said again, tears slipping down the side of her face, not from fear of death, but from exhaustion of living like this. The room fell silent. Behind the glass, the CEO watched, arms crossed, expecting professionalism, efficiency, compliance. He had built his empire on swift decisions and believed emotions were weaknesses. He assumed the single dad would follow protocol, do what was required, and walk away. But something inside the man refused to move. He thought of his daughter, of the nights she cried missing her mother, of how close he had come to giving up when life felt unbearable. He realized that sometimes, the fastest way wasn't the right one. Instead of turning away, he pulled a chair closer to the bed and gently took the woman's hand. His voice shook at first, but he spoke anyway. He told her about his wife, about the day the doctors said there was nothing more they could do, and about how he wished he had sat longer, listened more, loved harder in those final moments. He told her that pain makes you believe the world would be better without you, but that belief is a lie pain tells when it wants to win. The woman listened, surprised, her breathing slowing as if his words were easing something deeper than her body. Minutes passed, then more. Nurses glanced nervously at the clock. The CEO frowned, irritated that schedules were being disrupted. But something unexpected happened. The woman asked to see her brother. When the CEO entered the room, prepared to assert control, he froze. He saw his sister not as a patient file or a liability, but as a fragile human being holding on to hope by a thin thread. She told him she was scared, that she didn't want to be alone anymore, and for the first time in years, he didn't know how to respond. The single dad spoke again, quietly, reminding them both that sometimes the bravest act isn't ending pain quickly, but sitting with it, facing it together. He suggested one more option, not a miracle cure, but palliative care focused on comfort, dignity, and connection. No rush. No cold efficiency. Just time, however limited, filled with meaning. The CEO felt something crack inside him, a wall he had spent a lifetime building. He nodded, unable to speak. Weeks later, the woman was still alive, weaker but smiling more than she had in months. She spent her days talking, remembering, laughing softly when she had the strength. The single dad visited when he could, sometimes bringing drawings from his daughter, which made her eyes light up. The CEO watched all of this from a distance, changed by the quiet courage he had witnessed. He began funding programs focused on compassionate care, reshaping his company's values, not because it looked good, but because he finally understood what mattered. The day eventually came when the woman's time truly ran out, but it was peaceful. She wasn't begging for it to be fast anymore. She was surrounded by people, by warmth, by love. Afterward, the CEO found the single dad and thanked him, not with money or promotions at first, but with something rarer, respect. Later, he ensured the man had a stable position, healthcare for his child, and a future that felt less fragile. As the single dad walked home that evening, holding his daughter's hand, he realized that the most powerful moments in life don't come from authority or wealth, but from empathy and courage. When someone asks you to make it fast, sometimes what they truly need is for you to slow down, to see them, to remind them they are not alone. And in choosing compassion over convenience, one ordinary man proved that even in the darkest moments, humanity still has the power to change everything. The night after her words echoed through the room, the single dad couldn't sleep, because what had started as a simple decision to slow down had now become a turning point none of them could escape. He lay awake thinking about her face when she realized someone was finally listening, and about the CEO's eyes when control slipped from his hands and something far more human took its place. This wasn't over yet. What happened next would test every promise made in that room and reveal how one quiet choice could ripple through many lives. The following days were heavy but different. The woman's pain didn't disappear, yet something inside her had shifted. She began asking for small things she had stopped caring about: sunlight through the window, music from her childhood, stories from people who weren't afraid to talk about real life. The single dad became more than a caretaker. He listened when she spoke about dreams she never chased and regrets she carried, and sometimes they sat in silence, which somehow felt louder than words. Each visit reminded him how fragile time was, and how often people wasted it chasing things that didn't matter. The CEO struggled the most. Accustomed to controlling outcomes, he now faced something no amount of money could fix. He watched his sister soften, laugh quietly, and even cry without shame. It confused him. For years, he had believed emotions slowed progress, but here they were doing the opposite, healing wounds he didn't know existed. One evening, he stayed longer than planned and overheard the single dad telling his sister about his daughter's fear of losing him the way she lost her mother. The CEO felt a knot form in his chest. In that moment, he saw the man not as an employee, but as a father fighting every day to keep hope alive. When the woman's condition worsened, fear returned, sharper than before. One night she grabbed the single dad's hand and whispered that she was scared of being forgotten. He didn't offer empty promises. Instead, he told her that impact isn't measured by years lived, but by lives touched. He reminded her that she had already changed her brother, changed a company, and changed a father who would carry her words forever. Her tears came freely then, but they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of release. The final day arrived quietly. There were no rushed decisions, no cold instructions. The room was filled with calm voices and familiar faces. The CEO held his sister's hand, no longer hiding behind strength, and thanked her for teaching him how to feel again. The single dad stood back, giving them space, knowing his role had already been fulfilled. When she passed, it was gentle, and for the first time, death didn't feel like defeat. In the weeks that followed, the CEO kept his word. He transformed policies, funded compassionate care, and ensured families like the single dads would never be treated as numbers again. The single dad returned home each evening to his daughter, who noticed something different in her father, a deeper patience, a stronger calm. He taught her that courage isn't loud and love doesn't rush. Years later, when his daughter asked him why people sometimes say they want things to end quickly, he told her that pain can make people forget their value, and that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stay. Because when the world tells you to make it fast, choosing to slow down might just save a life, or at least give it meaning. Long after the room fell silent and the machines were turned off, the impact of that single moment refused to fade, because some choices do not end when a life does, they begin there. The single dad felt it weeks later when he caught himself pausing before every rushed decision, hearing her voice in his head, reminding him that speed is not always strength. What no one realized yet was that her final days had planted seeds that were about to grow in places far beyond that hospital. The CEO changed quietly at first. Board meetings that once lasted minutes now stretched longer, not because profits mattered less, but because people mattered more. He began asking questions no one had ever heard him ask before. How are the employees coping? Do families feel supported? Are we treating patients as humans or numbers? Executives were confused, shareholders skeptical, but the results spoke louder than resistance. Employee turnover dropped. Patient satisfaction rose. And for the first time, the CEO went home at night without the familiar emptiness that success had never filled. The single dad's life shifted too, though he didn't notice it right away. With a stable job and medical coverage, the weight he had carried for years began to lift. He had time again, time to read bedtime stories slowly, time to listen when his daughter talked about school, time to breathe. One evening, she asked him why he smiled more now. He struggled to answer, then told her that sometimes pain teaches people how precious time really is. She nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling the safety in his voice.